They hate when you elevate. You're stacking up losses, I'm handing them out, yeah, I had to go delegate. It feel like I'm floating, I'm lost in the moment, that's why I can levitate.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. As always, it's your boy Devan, and today we got a special guest for you. We got a guest that came from humble beginnings. Him and his wife have established a law firm, Ward Law Group, that has now have over 200 employees. So I want to introduce Greg Ward. Thank you for coming on today.
Hi, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate to be here, and hopefully I can have some good stuff for your listeners and maybe give them some insights.
No, awesome. Thank you for taking the time. I know, being a lawyer, let alone a business owner, it's one of those things. Your time is valuable, so I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, time is money for sure, and we'll talk about that a little later.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start off. What got you started in law, or why did you want to get started in law before even getting into your own practice?
Yeah, so great question. As I grew up, as you said, I grew up from humble backgrounds. I grew up kind of upper lower class, lower middle class, and unfortunately, like with so many people who are entrepreneurs, there's some substance abuse in the past. With my mother, my sister was a heroin addict who unfortunately passed away. I grew up in Baltimore. First of all, I should always say that because anybody who's from Baltimore, they kind of know. And I grew up over off of Edmondson Avenue, kind of like I was down in a place called Arbutus, but like right by Edmondson Avenue. And if you know Baltimore, that's kind of a bad area. Now, I wasn't in that bad of an area, but it was very close to the bad area. I grew up about a mile from the city line. My high school was there. So it was, and Baltimore's a tough town. It is. And you don't know that when you're growing up in a tough place. You just think that's normal. It's mindset, right? You get the mindset. And I was programmed at a young age. My mother she grew up a lot of time in an orphanage. So she had problems. And, a lot of her mindset was, that's not for us. Success isn't for us. Rich people have done something illegal, those kinds of things. And that was implanted in me at a young age. And it took a lot of work to root that out and reframe my mindset. So law was I was always somebody who was a little bit argumentative. I had a pretty good analytical brain. Everyone told me I should go to law school. I wanted to be a salesman because that was the path to success I saw. And I did outside sales for a while, but that got pretty boring fast. And so I decided, I read all like Zig Ziglar and all that stuff. And then so I had an opportunity to go to law school, and I was smart enough that I did real well on the test because I was not prepared for law school at all. I just took the test and got in, and for the LSAT, my grades were okay. And so that once I got to law school, I was like, yeah, this is for me. So I really kind of took off at that point.
So I think law. Don't take this the wrong way, but getting into sales, like besides the evidence aspect and the truth aspect, like it still is a sale, and then
you're absolutely right.
Having that
right. I went to my first job interview out of law school. I went to this company and I said, I want to be a trial lawyer, right? That's like the big thing. And I said, and really I have a background in sales. So, and the lawyer actually said to me, well, we lawyers generally consider ourselves to be, superior or higher or something, I don't know, something arrogant than salesmen. And I was like, okay, this is not the place for me because if you can't see how sales matters in this job, you're an idiot. Let's be honest, right? I don't like to be too harsh, but the dude was an idiot. So, so sales was, first piece of advice, if you don't know what to do first, get a job in sales. If anything, it will kick your butt and make you learn. And I was a commission based. That is a tough job. Even if you don't ever want to do sales again, it teaches you about people, having to knock on doors, and sometimes in the summer, sometimes in the winter, that is an outside sales job, man, that'll teach you a lot of good lessons, hard lessons, but the hard lessons are the good lessons.
No, I definitely agree with that. I feel like that should almost be like a school requirement at some grade level, right? Because that's the one job, right? Because sales isn't every industry, but that's the one trade that you learn communication, you learn people skills, you learn customer service, you learn all these aspects that translate into every area of your life. You learn how to communicate better, you communicate better with your family and all those other things. So I completely agree with that. With you going through and taking your LSAT and passing through law school, did you start at another law firm first, or did you just right out the gate, I'm going to do it myself?
So and it's a weird kind of story. When I interviewed what they call big law, right? The big law firms. I did really well in law school, although I went to a lower tiered law school. I did really well in law school, and my law school was a great law school. University of Baltimore. I had some great professors there, and they were always encouraging me and supporting me. And so I decided to try and go the big law route, which is big corporate type defense, wearing the blue suits and all that stuff. So I wanted to go that way, thinking that was the path to success again. And I didn't have any guidance in these areas, so I just thought that's the most obvious thing. And so I interviewed at several big law firms, and I realized the personality, there was just a disconnect there. But I still wanted it, so I ended up moving to Miami. I looked at a book where everybody, they had associate satisfaction surveys, and I found a firm in Miami. I applied to like 200 firms. And a place in Miami was a little different than it was a big law firm, but it was a different personality. And so I came to Miami. I didn't know anybody in Miami. I just said, what the heck? I like Latin people. I like Spanish. My mom thought Miami Vice was Miami. So she was like, you're going out of Baltimore to go to Miami Vice. It's going to be worse. And I'm like, no, really, it's not that bad. I got down to, it's 80 degrees in February. The salsa music is playing. And I'm like, nobody speaks English. And I'm like, yeah, I like this place. It's cool. So I took a job down here, and then I just stayed. But I did the big law for the first few years. And then after a few years, I realized that, it just wasn't my personality. It wasn't my fit. I'm more about people. I'm more about experiences. I'm more about communication. The guys who represent corporations, it's the nature of the work that they do is definitely bottom line driven. And so their analysis is about legal issues and not so much about the people who are impacted. And I'm a people person. So I said, after 5 years, that was enough for me.
No, I mean, you have to find your driving force or your purpose, or else any job, regardless of it, how much you love it, it's going to start to feel like work and just more tedious than, pleasurable at the same time.
Yeah.
So you can find that purpose.
And let me tell you a key point about this, guys. Like, the money isn't enough. I don't care how much money you make. And people are going to say, Greg, you're an idiot. But I promise you, money is never enough to be your primary motivator for anything. It just isn't. I've made a lot of money. And I can tell you that there are, even today, the struggle I deal with, because I'm over 50, the struggle I deal with is, do I just retire? Because I could retire and live a very nice life forever and not have to deal with any stress. Now, that's not my personality. But the truth is like when you hit a wall, and I've hit a couple walls in the last 10 years, the money's not enough to get you through it, man. You've got to have a mission, and you got to know what your purpose is. And it's not money. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're thinking about starting something, don't ever think it could be so much money. Because I'll tell you another big series of mistakes I made is looking for the best money option, right? So when I came out of law school, so paying six figures to this big firm back in 1998, that was a lot of money back then, especially for a kid whose parents made like 30 grand a year. That seemed good, but the money's never enough as to get you over the real challenges in life. You've got to be mission driven. And the mission, to give you a hint, is about people. It's about who you serve and what impact you want to have in your life, not about how much money you want to make. It just isn't enough. It really isn't.
No, I agree and align with that. It's not enough it's so superficial that on the days that you're hitting those obstacles, you're hitting, walls within your business or your career, it's not going to get you out of bed, right? You have to have that if you want to service people, if you want to, create a positive impact or something of that nature. That's good. It's what's going to push you. The money comes with it, and that's, a nice factor, but that is only supposed to be used as a tool, or should only be used as a tool, right, to continue doing what you love or what your purpose is for.
Yeah, money's a tool, man. You're 100% right. And it's, when you need the tool, it's good to have it, but right, that, you can't just build your whole life around amassing as much money and whatnot. And I even tell my kids, I'm like, we've got a lot of money. You're not going to get anywhere near as much as you think you're going to get. You better get a job. You got to learn. I say get a job. You got to get an education. You got to figure out and I'll teach them whatever they need to know about how to start and run a business. But, don't ever depend on, just inheriting money. Besides, what fun is that? You know what I mean? It's like being a trust fund kid. I guess it's good, but you see that, they melt down. At least what I see, the media portrays it. Like you inherit a lot of money, you go off the rails. And there's a whole other thing behind that I have a philosophy about. But yeah, it's the money's not enough. And the other thing is this, like, I came from very, minimal background. My oldest daughter, when I started this firm, I was sleeping on a couch. That's one story that I tell all the time because I had hit a financial bad spot. So my daughter was 4, and she had the bed, I had the couch. She knows what it's like. But my 7-year-old kids, they think the Four Seasons is a normal hotel, and so they walk in and they think they own the place, and it's not their fault. Like, they're not spoiled kids, but the potential for being spoiled is there. So, so it's, so they, and they go to a Holiday Inn or something. I mean, I never stayed in a Four Seasons until I was over 40. But my kids go there and they're like, the Holiday Inn, they're like, we don't like this hotel so much. And I'm like, suck it up. You're lucky to have a Holiday Inn, because I was staying at the Motel 6 when I was a kid, if I could even stay in a hotel. So, so
No,
perspective.
No, I mean, I want to stop right there on that real quick. Before we keep diving in, what is your perspective on, because I think that's actually a huge key that a lot of people overlook, is that especially you having 200 employees, and 200 plus employees, you train your employees, you train your teams, and the managers and so forth and everything. You've created this whole system around developing improvement within the business. But then sometimes when we go home, it's like we've done so much at work that we just kind of let our kids, especially like you're saying, trust fund kids, right? Just let them do what they want, and you just want to make them happy, versus teaching them the skills and teaching them the same things to develop into not a textbook trust fund kid, and do whatever they want. And then again, knowing that money is a tool, it's not a right, it's just a tool. What is your perspective on when you go home, like kind of trying to instill that in especially your 7-year-olds?
Yeah. So this, actually the 7-year-olds are a little easier, because the 18-year-old now is a teenager, and it's always hard to have an impact on a teenager. And I think sometimes, like for example, when my 18-year-old, she's going to Fordham next year in New York, and I made her look up how much the tuition is and email it to me. I was like, baby, I need to know how much the tuition is, and I need to know when it's due. I want her to know these things. You know what I mean? I want her to know how astronomically expensive college is, and take some responsibility for that. And so when she did that, then I told her, I had to sit down with my daughter and said, listen, if you screw up your first year, if you fail to get at least a 3.5 GPA, right? If you fail to do that, I will bring you home and you will go to a community college here in Miami. Period. Full stop. Don't even test me in this area, because I'm not going to spend as much. So I had to be hard with her a little bit, because there's so much of daddy, and she's beautiful and I love her and she's my princess and all that. But I had that my first year in college. I was away from home finally, and I came off the rails myself and had to go to community college. I think it was a great experience, because it humbled me a lot and realized that success isn't guaranteed, and no matter how smart you are. And then I learned to work hard when that happened. So I'll have her give her that experience. And so I want her to understand that. With the 7-year-olds, like I'll give you an example. First of all, parenting advice. I'm a Christian, and I ask you not to bring the baggage that goes with that, because I don't always follow what's the conservative approach to things. I follow what I believe Jesus is teaching, which is be kind to people and love people and help people as much as you can. And that's a very touchy subject today politically in our country. But my life is about service to others and serving the poor, and that's what I do in my law firm. We do car accidents, and most of my clients are poor. So with my 7-year-olds, first of all, piece of parenting advice: you must immediately correct inappropriate behavior in children starting at the age of 1. And when I say correct, just tell them, hey, we don't do that. That's inappropriate. You start giving a timeout about 18 months to 2 years old. I've never hit my kids. I've never had to hit my kids. They are absolutely terrified of timeouts, and I've never even yelled at my kids. Now, my wife has yelled at my kids, but I haven't. And I'm like, but they're scared of me, or respect me, I should say. And they really love me. And that's, and I always make sure that after I have to punish them, that I say, hey, listen, do you know why I punish you? I make them explain it back to me. And then if not, I will explain it to them. And I say, no, I love you. Give me a hug. Okay. It's over now. You can go back and have fun. So that's a parenting advice. A lot of parents, when you see a kid melting down in the grocery store, I don't want to say it's bad parenting, because my kids have melted down before, but kids are hungry, tired, bored, right? That's it. And they poop, right? If they're babies. That's it. You close the universe of issues, right? Or there's some kind of pain or discomfort. Like, that's it. And if you're in a grocery store, the kid's melting down, you stretched them too far, you didn't give them a nap, you didn't bring a snack for them, whatever. And so, this discipline at a young age is pretty easy if you don't lose your cool. Then as you get older, you start to teach lessons. So for example, we were in Rome, and I don't necessarily believe in giving money directly to people who are begging, because I think that perpetuates some things. But we do give a lot of money to organized charities for food and shelter and those kinds of things. I think it's better to put it through an organization that administers it directly. But we were in Rome, and there's a little homeless kid there, and maybe they weren't homeless, but my kids have like 18 Anna and Elsa dolls, and the little girl's there, and she's there, and they're begging. And I said to my daughters, I said, listen, you guys have 18 of these dolls. That little girl has no dolls. It would make her very happy if you give her your dolls. And they had these Anna and Elsa dolls. So they went over and they gave the little girl the dolls. That wasn't a money thing, because they're not going to. And God forbid they sell the dolls. But I want that little girl to know that people do care. Strangers care, right? And I want my kids to know they don't have it, or they have it better than other people. And it was just by luck of birth that they got us as parents and not that kid's parents. And so we've got to be somewhat compassionate. So I try and teach that. Now, you also have to be wise about how you administer, your giving. But I want to get in my kids' head the sense that they're not entitled. They're not any better than anybody else. They just happen to be born. They got great brains for sure. They were lucky to have that, or blessed. But, so I try and sneak those little lessons in. And they, to this day, this was like 2 years ago. This was, I think they were 5. To this day, I think they remember that story. They're like, remember we gave our dolls to that little girl? And I said, yeah, I'm very proud of you. So reinforce that idea. Just little things like that. Like parenting is the little things. It's not the big life lessons. It's just the consistency with parenting, I think, is important.
No, I think that is as small as that was, like those are the big life lessons. Like
right.
People try to overthink, what life lessons are and how you teach them. But like something like that, it's not, you instilled something that, is giving and helping others, but without adding the financial aspect to it. So you take that away, because then otherwise that kind of instills, like, when you give or how you give to people is all, is just in money. It's, you have a bunch of these, and this would make this one person happy if you just, sacrifice this, or basically give them, some of this, or whatever the case is. And that instills it from a young age. So it leaves out that money tie and just shows them the poor basically teaching of it.
Yeah. There's, I used to do trial work, a lot of trials, and they talk about like their continuum of, like, some people are very personally responsible and some people are very socially responsible. And a lot of times there's a dichotomy between social responsibility and personal responsibility. And I'll just see this as a political dichotomy too. And you could argue that by being personally responsible, you are socially responsible. But, that notwithstanding, I do feel a strong compulsion to be socially responsible. Personal responsibility is like table stakes, right? You got to be, don't cheat on your wife, don't, steal, those are all personal responsibility things. But the social responsibility is like, do we take care of, or at least listen to each other? That's something we're lacking in our society. We don't listen to each other anymore, or we can just put people in boxes. That's why I asked, don't box me because I'm Christian. Because it's like, it's so easy to put me in that box of intolerant. And like, I'm unfriending a lot of my friends on Facebook because they're like, this current Israel-Palestine issue is really inflammatory. And I have my personal beliefs about what, how things should go in that. But I don't think that, it's hard. The Israelis should defend themselves, right? For sure. And there are kids who were killed and were victims of terrorism. That doesn't necessarily mean that you can do carpet bombing in Gaza, right? So I'm very pro-Israel, but at the same time, I can understand. Now, are there agitators who are making this into an issue that is different than maybe what most people would believe? Yeah, there are. And so that's not right. You know what I mean? But it's like, do you arrest them? I don't know. I'm like I'm just spitballing here. But the truth is like, there's not an extremely clear answer. And the Palestinians and the Israelis have been fighting for a long time, or have been arguing for a long time. And, I'm not so sure there's a path through that's easy. But, when you just bucket somebody and say all of them are bad, or the Israelis are engaging in genocide, or the Palestinians. Now, Hamas says we want to eradicate the Jewish people. So that's definitely wrong. It's pretty extreme. But your average Palestinian grandma, like, does she care? I've been to Palestine, by the way. I've been to Palestinian-controlled Israel, so I know kind of like these are just people too. And so it's like we got to come together a little bit more, and it's hard when we get polarized like we are. By the way, if you want to get in business, don't waste your time thinking about these issues, because I'm successful if I have time. If you're in business, do your work. Like, just get this stuff. Like, ignore the world for the period of time that you're starting your business, because this stuff will distract you if you are socially responsible. And it's a huge distraction of my life. My wife was like, "Why are you so?" Because I'm in the middle. I have a lot. Most of my friends in this area are Jewish. I'm in Florida. I'm in Miami, and I'm a lawyer. So and I've been to Israel several times myself. So this is a tricky. I hope I don't inflame any of your listeners.
No, you're good. And actually, I wanted to, see what your thoughts are, because with these things, from that war, from Black Lives Matter, from all these different things that are being portrayed on social media, and you are seeing basically two sides getting split between just and again, this comes down to like the social aspect and the personal aspect of beliefs, right? And then some businesses, right, are starting to take a stand on a side, or basically, as the business or whoever's basically using their social media or posting their social media is basically picking a side. What are your thoughts on once a company starts to engage in these kind of things?
I mean, man, oh gosh, that's a hard question. And you're asking me a question I don't like answering, because I try and avoid taking sides if I can, because I want to serve everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really two schools of thought of this, right? So school of thought number one is get your tribe and only serve them, and polarize yourself as much as possible so you become the go-to person for that group of people in your tribe. Then there's other school of thought is, like, for me, my school of thought is I want to be a light for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, and this happened, Black Lives Matter, right? Or the trans issues here in Florida is another great example. I mean, there's a lot of really polarizing stuff going on within the trans and the LGBTQ community with respect to the Florida government. I mean, look, man, if you need help, and you're gay, like, I'm not gonna hold that against you. Like, I have my own personal quote unquote Christian beliefs, but that's not. I mean, it's not my place to tell you. Let me tell you. I'll put it this way. I've done a lot of bad stuff too, right? We all come from, and this is the Christian view, we all come from this place of brokenness. And so I can't judge other people on that. Now, if they're actively trying to like shoot me, yeah, I'm gonna judge that. But it's like, so I don't, so yeah, you have social responsibility, and I get that. And you have the, and my wife is Cuban American. She came across the border as an immigrant at 14. So, and I will tell you that it personally offends me when people call immigrants, quote, illegal immigrants. That is an ignorant, an uneducated approach. Period. Full stop. I'll take you on any day of the week. Are they undocumented? Yes. My wife was an illegal immigrant when she came across the border at 14, and she got status because she's Cuban after 2 months. But it's like, especially if you're Christian, Jesus says in the Bible straight up, I was a stranger and you welcomed me. That word stranger is xenos, and xenos means foreigner. So if you're Christian and you don't have a welcoming spirit, that doesn't mean open the borders, but if you don't have a welcoming spirit, you're wrong on the Bible. And I have this argument with pastors, and they don't get it, and so it's like, so to me, like, I'm like, this is where I stand, because I love churches and I love doing, the work of what I perceive to be Jesus, but you got to get your Bible right. And so, so I take stands on for the little guy. I think that's really what I'm trying to get to. Sometimes it's hard to tell who the little guy is, I guess. But I serve everybody, and I love everybody. Jesus tells me to love everybody, so I have to love everybody. Does that necessarily mean that I agree with everybody? No, but I hope you respect my opinion, and I'll respect, or I'll try and find something we can agree on, to bridge that gap. But I'm sure someone's going to hate what I said, because you got to take a stand, and I get it too, and hope you don't hold it against me. But this is, I'm old enough to know what I believe, and that's it. So
no, I think, but what you said was important. Like, I mean, you kind of answered my question in the sense of like, you have your personal beliefs, right? And everyone has their personal beliefs, but your company's beliefs shouldn't always be portrayed, because you're there to service people in mass, and not in, just because they align with your beliefs necessarily, right? So I think that's the thing, is like, I mean, especially when everything was happening with COVID, and then like, not that I agreed or disagreed with their side that they picked, but when a company itself, the brand image, started basically, picking sides and posting about the sides, like, I was like, I'm just never going to shop there again. Like, it's,
yeah,
whether
right.
I believed with what you were saying or not, like, politics, these kind of beliefs, they shouldn't be tied to that brand. You're a clothing brand, right? You're
right.
Whatever. It's like,
yeah, that's a good point, right? Like, who cares what I think about this issue, right? Now, if it's something like LGBTQ people, I hire LGBTQ people, like,
right.
That's it. And I don't want that to be a barrier for them coming to work with me. And so I always am very sensitive about that. I have LGBTQ people working for us.
Yeah.
It's just the right thing. And the law, it's what the law requires, of course, but even beyond that, I just can't see how anybody would ever, if I were discriminating against people, or I were a bigot, that they would ever trust me. Talking about the COVID thing for a second, I have my own personal beliefs about COVID, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who disagree with that. I shut down my office. I told everybody we're not going to lay anybody off. Our cases went way down because nobody was driving. I said I'm not going to lay anybody off. We had a big war chest that we used to pay the people while our work slowed down. And fortunately, Florida came out of COVID pretty quickly, and so we were able to get back to work. And I didn't know that when I said I'm not laying anybody off. But I know that there are a lot of people. I mean, they politicize the COVID thing. I know what I personally did, and I know what I encouraged people to do as far as how to act themselves. I will tell you, I don't care what the studies say, and the studies are starting to come out now on the other side of this. Working remotely 100% is not as productive as working in the office. This is another business piece of advice for you guys. Listen, I worked in my garage for a year. I get it. I had to. Couldn't afford an office. But the truth is, building culture, building team, and productivity, it goes down. The studies that they've done, I know because I did my own studies. I had my productivity reports. I had KPIs and my performance reports. We dropped 30% in productivity with people working remotely. It just is. Now, maybe that would have been some PTSD because of COVID, but the truth is we never got back from that. And so we have a no remote policy for the domestic employees who are here, just because it just doesn't work. And there's an article in The Economist that just came out last month that said that the initial studies they base this on about increasing productivity were actually miscalibrated. So it was in last month's last month's issue of The Economist. And the truth is, people want to work from home because they want to go to the gym and they want to take a nap or whatever it is. You can't build a great culture in your office, and you should try and build a great culture in your office with people working from home. So I got opinions on everything, man.
COVID. No, I mean, I think that's huge. I mean, even with myself, right? Because the Mindset Cafe, it's something that we do on the side. I have my actual business and everything like that. And so believe me, I know working in my business or working remote, there's two different aspects. One, there's a time and place for it, right? In certain industries and at certain levels of, job title, right?
Mm-hmm.
There can be benefits for it, but not everyone can deal with those basically flexible, arrangements. They think of it as a day off. Even if you give them 1 day a week, they can work from home. They take that as a day off more times than not. Right.
Yeah.
They do a little bit of work. They have the computer. They wiggle the mouse around to make sure that it shows that they're still active. Believe me, I've seen it,
Yeah,
and,
right.
And it's one of those things where there's a time and place. And my thing is, I think companies are trying to believe the stat, whether how accurate it is or not, because the one thing it does do is it minimizes your overhead for
Sure.
need of a big, office space and stuff. But it's like, if you're just trying to, nickel and dime those overhead costs, you're losing out on other key aspects, like you're saying, building that, team camaraderie, building that, structure. When people have to basically come into the office, they put their work mask on, they walk out the office doors, they're taking their work mask off, right? Mm-hmm. It's two different, mindsets for the actual individual that's working.
For sure. And by the way, I had a Fortune 500 HR person I was talking to about this issue. And they were talking about how you can actually manage effectively a remote work person, and they monitor you like Big Brother, right? I mean, they have programs that will analyze whether you're wiggling the mouse and doing that, and they fire you, period. So you get the best of the best, right? So if I had the top, 30% of the labor pool, could they work remotely? Yeah. To be clear, total transparency, I have offshore workers. Mm-hmm. They are the very best of their countries, and so they work very, very well. Now, would they work better in a closed environment? Probably they would, but I'm willing, because I'm also, it's the cost is half to a third for a domestic employee, and I can't hire domestics fast enough because I just don't have the labor pool to draw from, because it's very competitive right now. Unemployment is very low. So I, do I have some people who are remote? Technically, yeah, because I have offshore people, but there's a huge saving. So I understand and am sympathetic to the companies that are trying to save their overhead. But I do think it's penny smart, pound foolish. And the other thing I'll say to young workers, and you're dealing with entrepreneurs here mostly, but the truth is, if you're a young worker, 85% of what you learn is at the water cooler. It just is. And it's not that you should spend 85% of your time at the water cooler, but the conversations and the connections you make at the water cooler are absolutely invaluable. The best and it's about building relationships. So what is going to happen in 10 years if we continue with a remote work culture is, People are not going to be promoted. Maybe the best talent won't be recognized, and people are not going to grow. They just aren't. And so there's going to be a crisis in 10 years of relatively underskilled, underdeveloped, underlearned workforce. And, you know, and then they're going to be complaining. And I guess business is going to have to shift to accommodate that. But the truth is that, like, you got to be real. Listen, man, some of the best lessons I learned, I used to work at Big Law. So I would go around at 3:30 on a Friday. I saved more people's backsides at 3:30. I've got people who still owe me to this day, 20 years later. I had my phone, right? I used to be a copy machine salesman, so I knew how to run copy machines. I would have people call me at 1 o'clock in the morning, lawyers who didn't know how to run a copy machine. And they would be like, hey, I'm here in the thing. And I answer my phone. I want to help out. I got people who still remember this stuff from 20 years ago. Hey, you helped me out with that major project I had to get out. Da, 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 da. It's like, you know, but if I didn't know these people, I wasn't with them and I didn't care about them. We didn't have dinner and lunch together and all this. I wouldn't have done that. Screw you. It's my personal time, you know? So it's about building those kinds of relationships and those experiences, you know,
No, definitely
developing a commitment.
And then also, like with you saying with that, like it's like you're building those relationships, you're building that experience. But also, if you only work from home, right, you don't get the experience of learning from the people that are better than you. Like if you're in sales, let's say, you don't get to see the top performers and what they're doing, how they're selling, how they're what techniques are they
doing. Listen to the calls, like what are they saying on the phone? Oh, that's good.
Exactly. You know, for in the law group, like, you know, how the top lawyers are basically dealing with their clients, you know, what are they doing? How are they finding additional clients? All those things you don't necessarily get, you know, unless you go out of your way to try to, you know, connect with those people. But when you're in the office, like you see everyone, you get to talk to everyone, you know, and you get that experience as well, you know, so it's definitely huge. I agree with what you're saying. I think, you know, I mean, we have offshore people as well. And, you know, we have that time and place for those needs, but it's one of those things where building the actual, you know, company itself and that camaraderie, that, you know, foundation, it definitely has to be, you know, kind of in-house as well.
Yeah. And then if you do have offshore people, one of the things you have to do, you have to be intentional about building the culture that way. So we have daily huddles and weekly huddles where we loop them in too, and we make sure that we recognize them for their achievements and shout outs and things like that. So that's all very important. That's the best you can do. We also ship them like t-shirts and, you know, swag and that kind of stuff. And it's, you know, because I want them to feel like they're part of an organization. It's very easy to just consider them numbers because they're offshore. You don't really see them. Everyone, if you know, we do a firm cruise every year. Every other year we do a retreat and then a cruise. If they pay for their flight, but we'll pay for their cruise if they want to come up with their significant other and take a cruise with us too. I love to get to know people and some beautiful people. The other thing great about offshore folks is I've gotten thank you letters from both employees or technically contractors and their parents who say, thank you for giving my kid a chance. You know, they really were inspired by you. And that's, you know, man, I've never got a thank you letter from a domestic employee. And we do a lot to try and promote our domestic employees. Like, you know, we got retreats, we give away a car every year, all this stuff, you know, and it's a different mindset, I think, that some of these folks have. And it's rewarding to me because I know I'm pouring into some people who may not have those opportunities too.
No, that's awesome. But let's tie it into, you know, your business again real quick. So with you, you know, working in corporate law, you know, you basically found that it wasn't your passion, and, you know, after working there for 5 years, so what made you want to establish your own business? Because being a lawyer and being a business owner aren't necessarily go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, and I love taking the extremes on your show. I feel like you really push me into this absolute extreme box that I don't like being in, but I'm going to be in it anyway. Being a lawyer is the absolute dichotomy, the diametrical opposition to being a business person. I've had to unlearn legal skills and learn business skills. So yeah, I really don't practice that much anymore. I handle really if it's a really big settlement negotiation, you know, $50, $100 million, I'm the guy. But your run of the day stuff, I'm looking at metrics, I'm looking at, you know, formulas, I'm looking at, you know, what a CEO does. And I have a lot of attorneys who work with us that manage those things. So it is a very different mindset. Jim Collins did write that the best CEOs are actually lawyers because they learn to ask the right questions. And this is something I want to emphasize to your listeners too. This is like one of my top 10 points. Ask a lot of questions. Learn to ask good questions. I can tell you that mindset shift happens when I started asking different questions. I'll give you a really good example. I did the Bob Proctor, you know, write your goals on your card, think and grow rich, carry it around. I'm so happy and grateful now that I have $1.2 million in passive income from multiple sources on or before December 31st, 2010, right? It was when I started digging this gold, right? So you could go back sometime, or maybe it was less. No, what year is this? No. I'm sorry. It was 2008 or 6, because it took me 12 years to get my first million, and now it's it's doubled. So this was 20 years ago maybe. That was not useful for me. That the meditation, visualizing the money, like all that stuff, none of that worked for me. When I started asking the question, how can I provide $1 million of service? That's when things changed. When I started taking the focus off of me receiving money onto what I can give as service. And so now the question I ask myself every year is, what does the CEO of, now my question is, $100 million a year business, what do they do? What do they look like? How do they spend their time? And then my next question is going to be a $250 million a year business. So that's maybe 10 years out. When I started asking myself those questions, it was 10 million and 25 million, and and we'll go up from there. That was really powerful to me, because I can tell you specifically. Your show is great. You've got the fitness thing. Let me give you a little example. And I think we were over 50 million last year. I have a trainer. When I travel a lot. I will have my trainer on a Zoom call in the gym, wherever I am, 5 days a week. No excuses. So I'm going to be in, New Orleans in a couple of weeks. Now, Greg, could they send you the workout? Yeah, they could. And there's a 50-50 chance I'm going to blow it off. Right. But if he's on the Zoom call or on a WhatsApp or whatever, FaceTime call, like I put him on a little tripod and I go around the gym, and I will not stay in a hotel that doesn't allow me to do that. This is the truth. Like the breakers up in Palm Beach, I'm never going back there because they made me stop that. And I'm like, no, I'm done. I'll never come here again. Fancy hotel, please. So like that's critical. His wife is my wife's trainer. She cooks for us. So when I travel, if I'm flying domestic, it's a little harder. I'm sorry, when I fly international, it's a little harder. I carry a bag of food. I got little chicken cups. In fact, I'll show you here. Like here's I think this is oatmeal here. Yeah, it's my oatmeal, my snack already prepared. And I've got my boneless, skinless, David Hughes, 0 sugar barbecue sauce on my chicken breast here. And I carry that everywhere I go. And I have to eat out sometimes, but the more meals I can rack up that are, and by the way, this is organic, glycophosphate, whatever, free oatmeal, stuff, unsweet, all that. So like, because the food you feed yourself, like, but that's a question, like, what does the CEO of a major corporation do? You work out all the time, 0 compromise on that. You eat right, you drink plenty of water, you put your health first. And so those are the kinds of things. And so I just encourage your listeners, if you want to be very successful, start asking yourself better questions. And you can get excited about the answers. That's the key, because you have to emotionalize the goals, right? That's one of the things that Proctor and Napoleon Hill and all those guys say. Emotionalize the goal. But you can get emotional in response to a question. You can get really excited about it. And you need to learn to control, like Tony Robbins, you need to control your state. So a question can change your state, right? And Tony Robbins is great about this. He's always like, what does this mean, right? I can almost see him saying it. What are you assigning? What does this mean to you? And can you change that meaning? And that's really just talking about changing these questions you're asking yourself about the situation, and then you get excited about it. And I don't always do this. You can tell I get excited, but I also get pissed sometimes. So I'm not always doing this. But if I can do it more than I don't do it, that's a path to success.
No, I agree. And I think with the asking questions, it is so important, because how you said you were doing like the affirmations and writing it down, right? And then you reframed it. It's not that maybe that didn't work for you. It was the method of your structure, right? So instead of saying, basically the perspective of, I'm so grateful for this, it's like, I'm so grateful that I'm able to provide this, or, so switching up that perspective of receiving versus giving. And then also when you tell yourself a goal, right, it's one of those things where if you can ask yourself, why is that your goal? And most times if you can't answer why that's your goal, then you need to really think about it, right? Because that goal is surface level for you. And so if you can ask yourself 1 level down, 2 levels, and even 3 levels down of why that is what it is, and why that your answer is what it is, you're going to come down to like your core root of your actual goal. And now it'll be a lot easier for you to, 1, push yourself on those days you don't want to, but also things will start aligning. And I think it's huge that you said, basically, what does, $100 million, CEO do, right? You're starting to visualize what would I look like, or what would I be doing if I was here, right? And so now your visualization is, and you're basically, your guidance is yourself but already at this status, right? So is this going to align with me doing this, or would this version of me be doing this? If
And
not, then
honestly,
don't
your
do it.
subconscious mind gets in that, right? So,
Mhm.
so here's the problem with the goals, right? With the, I'm so happy and grateful, because you have your subconscious mind, which is incredibly destructive sometimes. As Robin will say, it's a heater and an air conditioner. You get to a certain level of success that you believe you can be at, and then the AC kicks on and pushes you back down again. So when you start talking about this, I'm so happy and grateful I earn $10 million a year, right? Your brain can get in there and be like, no, you don't. You're not earning $10 million a year. You're an idiot, or you can do self-destruct. But when you say, how can I earn $10 million a year? It takes the negative Nelly out of your inner dialogue and just puts your brain in a productive way of actually creating solutions to that. One other thing I do want to touch on, because it wouldn't be fair for me to do all this talking and not talk about the spiritual dimension of this. I will tell you that the one light switch moment that I did have is I did all the self-help stuff and read all these books, and it was not getting traction until I had a personal spiritual experience, and I became a Christian, right? And what does that mean? Well, for a born-again Christian, we believe that we confess that Jesus is our Savior. And I can tell you at that moment, it was really that moment that my life did change. And as a practical thing, because I was reading the Bible before this happened, but I want to encourage your listeners, the Bible is a great self-help book. The principles I'm talking about here, they're all in the Bible, right? They all are there. Psalms and Proverbs, and you read the stories of the greats in the Bible. And so I had read a lot of that stuff, and then it really clicked for me when I had this spiritual experience. And the reason why I want to bring this up is the thing that finalized my mindset shift, right? Because I started asking myself, what promises does God have for me? And that question is all throughout the Bible. Like, what does God promise to me? And the reason why I say that is that helps, there's an outside spiritual force that helps eliminate all of the negative stuff that you've gotten as a young person and growing up. And you know that there is, I think we can all agree, 99% of people will agree that there is a divine force, right? I think we can all agree about that. Most of us, there's not any pure atheists, maybe agnostics, and then the question is what is the intention of that divine force? And how do I align with that divine force? Because that's all the secret and all that other stuff that's out there. That's all just alignment with the divine. And so, my personal belief is Christianity, and I meditate on that, and that helps me realign, the mindset of what I had. And so that spiritual thing, and so the one I want to talk to your listeners about is you do got to get your spirituality worked out. This gets back to the money thing too. If you don't know who you are and who you serve and why you're doing it, you talked about this, why you're doing it, and it's a bigger than I get money, right? Or I get to be a big shot, or I make a lot of money. I'm a big shot guy. That's ego, right? Or I get to tell people what to do. Like, those are all unhealthy reasons. They come with it, but the real reason should be I really want to give up my life for someone else and serve them. And when you come up with that, then that's very, very powerful, and it aligns with what we believe. I think most of us believe spiritually that we're supposed to serve other people. So I do encourage people to because when you see an athlete meltdown or a rock star meltdown, or when the success comes fast and they don't know how to handle it, I do believe that they don't have the spiritual foundation and the spiritual mindset to deal with that success. And the Bible does say, Ecclesiastes says, money has wings. It will fly away if you do not have the right foundation, especially. So I just want to encourage people. I'm not, you don't have to believe what I believe, but I do encourage that you find some faith that you can believe, and hopefully it'll lead you to where I'm at. But that's your journey, not mine. And I hope I'm a good example for what I profess. But the truth is that I do believe you got to get some foundation spiritually, because the Bible says you don't want to build your house on sand, and I think that's a basic principle that you don't need the Bible to tell you is true. If you don't have the foundation, you're building your house on sand, and the storms come. Nothing attracts storms like success in business. If you are successful in business, it's just like bad stuff shows up. It just does. There's always a crisis every day. There's always something going wrong. And then you got people. You got all the people added in, and you think you hire with one person, you've got one group of problems, and you hire two people, you got four groups of problems. Right? They're exponentially multiplying. So you want to make sure that you got your spirituality square, so you can be the example and help people navigate their issues too.
No, definitely. I think that is really, really a key point too. Like your spirituality, whatever you do believe in, it's one of those things where that does help tie into not just your mindset, but also your emotional health, your emotional intelligence, which translates into your communication skills and other aspects of your life. But if you don't have that basically foundation spirituality, and leading into your mindset and your emotional state, like all those things, basically, like you said, is going to be, your house is, going to be built on sand, and any little storm or, wave that comes up is going to start sweeping you out. Right.
For sure.
So, what I like to do is, I want to put you on the spot one more time is, let's say hypothetically, everything that you've established, the law firm, every recording, everything has been, basically wiped off, the planet, but you're allowed to leave one message or one, thing that has helped you basically become who you are, or that you've learned over your journey to where you are now. What would that message be?
I got to do two.
All right, that's fine.
Because I mean, I'm sitting here evangelizing about Jesus, right? I do think that the faith is the answer. If on my tombstone, I want to have written a giver with a heart for God. Like that's what I want my life to stand for. So know what you want your life to stand for. That's important. I will give one more piece of advice. This may not be the massive truth, but I know it's for some people out there, because I want to talk about your life. I'm at the point in my life where I'm starting to think about my legacy. I hope I'm talking to some 20 and 30-year-olds and maybe some 40-year-olds. For performance, okay, there are really three variables that you have to learn to manage in life: your money, your time, and your energy. Okay. When you are young, you have your energy, your health, right? But you don't have a lot of money. And you probably don't have a lot of time. But you've got to learn to manage the limiting variable at that stage in life. So when you're young, you definitely don't have any money, unless you're a trust fund kid, right? But you have some time, because you haven't gotten totally in your career. You don't have kids yet, those kinds of things, and you've got your health, energy, right? So that's great. So work your butt off, right? Don't go out and party. This is what the problem a lot of young people do, is they go out and they spend all that energy partying. Spend that energy on developing yourself. You don't have the money to go do the crazy stuff. So, let's buckle down, lay the foundation, put the time in to develop yourself. As you get a little older, you're going to have kids. You start making a little bit more money, and you still got a lot of energy, but you don't have a lot of time, because you got the kids, you got your career, you got your spouse, you're trying to manage all these things. So that's going to be, you're not going to be able to work as hard as you could when you're 20. So let's say you're your 30s, right? You still got to grind on it, and you've got to invest in your family at this time to really lay the foundation for your family. Because then you get to my age, and I have a lot of money, and I can do whatever I want to do with my time. I'm not limited by anyone, right? But it's hard to get up some mornings. So my limiting factor at this stage of my life is energy. And God forbid, knock on wood, you don't have a health issue. I hope that never happens to any of you. But the issue is energy. And so the mistake I see people making is they take the energy of their 20s and they waste it. When you're in your 20s, you got to be working some big old days, work 50, 60, 70 hours a week, grind it out, get that experience, do a sales job. I was working two full-time jobs. I was grinding. I was in law school. I was doing a 60-hour week. Plus I was working an internship and all that stuff. Just use that. You've got the energy, you've got time, not a lot of money. So you're not going to be traveling. You're going to want to travel later. So just learn to manage the limiting variable at each stage in your life. That's what I'm trying to, and exploit that, right? Exploit what it is. Because right now, as I say, I have time and I have money. So it's just about energy. And so I've got to schedule my day better, and I get up early. I'm usually shot by 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm exhausted. So it's, I just can't do anything else. So I usually try and go to train at that point, but don't make any major decisions after that time. So that I think that's useful advice, because I noticed that pattern happens with everybody. When I go, guys my age, just like, let's do that. And we're like, oh man, I'm so tired right now. I just don't want, and I'm fit. I'm not like, I'm working out all the time, but oh man, my legs just hurt that workout from 2 days ago. I feel my legs right now from 2 days ago. I'm sore, man. I'm just sore all the time. So it's, so enjoy that phase, but learn to manage that. I think that's useful advice. So your faith obviously is the most important thing. And then learning to manage the limiting variable in your life. I think that's really key to success. And the other stuff I said obviously is also important, but that one distinction I think can really help you be more productive. And I mean productive in the broad sense, not in the daily work output sense, right? Just, manage that variable.
No, I think that's awesome. I mean, as simple as that sounds, that is a huge thing. And knowing that basically life is phases, right? You start off with, your limiting factor being the money, and then it goes into your limiting factor being your time, and then your energy. And it is so true. And if you're if you're wasting your potential of that phase on just, useless stuff, or, you want to hang out with friends, it's like you'll have the time later to do all those things, but you might not have like the energy, or like you said, the time or then, right? So it's like use your strong point now, and know what your weak point is, so that you can try to focus on improving it. But there is naturally going to be a weak point at some, at different phases of your life, just like there is at different phases of business, in a relationship, all those kind of things. So I think that is amazing. With, you being a business owner and, an attorney, if people wanted to connect with you and, pick your brain about, getting into law, because you worked in corporate, you worked,
Sure.
now you have your own, personal injury and everything like that. If people want to connect you with you on that aspect, or if they're in Florida and they do need, attorney, for personal injury, how can they reach out to you?
Well, let me put this plug out there. Not only Florida, we open an office in New York. We're going to be in New Jersey next year, and we're also licensed in Texas, Maryland. Like my wife and I have been slowly expanding. I shouldn't say so slowly; it's actually pretty quick. But we've been methodically expanding our practice. So really, if it's anywhere in the country, you can call us, and I'll find a lawyer for you. We might be able to handle it ourselves. How to connect with me? Attorney Greg Ward is my Instagram profile, and you can just do Gregory Ward on LinkedIn. LinkedIn. Those are both good places. I do a weekly kind of motivational speech about 2 or 3 minutes, Motivational Mondays, and I do some other content. I do talk a lot at churches, talking about spiritual principles. If you're interested, I've got a bunch of stuff on YouTube as well that will hopefully give you some value. And again, I try not to offend anybody. If I did, I'm sorry. Maybe I need to clarify. I'm replaying in my mind everything I said. I was like, I don't think anything was too offensive, but I mean, we're all can have different opinions, and I think unfortunately we do have, we get polarized, and we need to work together, because the goal is service, and the goal is serving other people, and I don't ever want any of my personal opinions to be a barrier to me being able to serve other people and help them. And I do want to help young people and mentor them. I never had any mentors growing up. Everything I learned was by making mistakes. So I made a lot of mistakes. So if I can help you avoid mistakes. Let me finish with this though. When someone who has had more results than you have, okay? So you need to look at their fruit, what the Bible says, evaluate their fruit. If you see a successful business person and you ask them advice, take the damn advice. Because nothing frustrates me more. If you're successful, you usually see other people's flaws pretty easily, right? I see all the flaws I see most of my flaws, and I surround myself with people who can identify my flaws. I cannot tell you, more times than not, people come to me and their problem is very obvious. And I say, well, here's your problem. And they say, well, actually it isn't. Yes, it is. And 3 years later, 4 years later, they're like, you know what, it was the problem. Yeah, save yourself 3 or 4 years. Just listen. Because most people, I mean, I get this in relationships too. Like it's, you have a happy marriage, Greg. Tell me about this. And so here's the problem. You're too stubborn. Well, that's not it. I'm not that stubborn. You're being stubborn right now. I always ask the question, can I be direct with you? Yes, please. Okay, I'm going to tell you the advice. And then they're like, that's not it. Yes, it is it. I know it's it. It's very, but you may not be ready to deal with that. So if you get somebody, if you take someone who's successful, if you're lucky enough to talk to them and ask them a question, take the damn advice. Even if you don't agree with it, just try it on and see how it feels. And you may see you get a breakthrough. Most of my wife coached me, she tells me what's wrong with me. I'm like, it's not that. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, let me try it anyway. And she's usually right. So, I'm blessed to have that. And my wife tells me that I'm wrong in some areas. She's really the only one who can do that effectively. She does it in a non-confrontational. She asks me questions. She's like, well, would you think this? And then I'm like, that starts getting my brain going. So take the advice, please, from people who are, and listen, I've got the success. You watch Instagram people, if they don't have a company where they got a couple hundred employees that they really built, don't listen to them. There's so much of this edutainment, right? Don't listen to people who haven't done it and then admit they failed a bunch of times too. Because if you haven't failed yet, you don't know what you don't know. So that's big encouragement. There's so many people out on Instagram who are like, oh, here's what you do. I'm like, that's definitely not what you do. But, it's entertaining. I'm not that entertaining. I don't know. People don't follow me that much, but I can tell you I've made a lot of mistakes, and I can help maybe you avoid some of those mistakes. So that's my parting gift, and I hope that I can be of help to some people. It's been a beautiful journey, and it had a lot of pain, but a beautiful journey. And hopefully I got another 30 or 40 years in me. I keep my fingers crossed and keep eating my chicken.
No, that's awesome. No, thank you again so much for taking the time out today. And honestly, it was so much knowledge in here. So make sure you guys share this with a friend, leave a review, and if you guys want to get connected with Greg, I'll go ahead and connect his information in the show notes. But Greg, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks a lot.